Nicholas was a family man. He loved his wife Alexandra, and she loved him back. They were lucky to have such a match at the time, since the rule was to wed for power rather than affection. Married in 1894, they had four daughters: Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia. Alexei, their son, and heir to the throne, was their last child. The Romanovs were a happy family. Nicholas became Tsar after the assassination of his father, Alexander III. He was an anti-Semite, meaning he didn't like Jews, and he believed that it was his right to rule as a sacred ruler with absolute power, also known as autocrat. Nicholas didn't like politics or politicians. He often ignored his political duties and Russia's rising economic problems. This led to the Russian people disliking him. On Sunday, 22nd of January 1905 in St. Petersburg, an armed demonstrator was fired upon by the royal guards. It is estimated that around 100 died and over 1,000 were injured, either from bullets or from being trampled on. The protesters were protesting about the economic problems in Russia was having and the fact that there was no food for anyone to eat. By 1914, most of the people are over the Romanovs, especially the Tsarina Alexandra since she was German. In September of 1915, Nicholas gained complete control over the military. He had to go to the front line to help, even though he has no experience being in the army. This meant leaving his wife Alexandra in charge. His most trusted advisor, George Rasputin, was illiterate and a self-proclaimed faith healer, and was often called the Holy Devil. The reason Rasputin was able to stay with the Empress was because she was highly religious and believed that Rasputin managed to help her son, Alexei, with his hemophilia. The people are outraged about the Tsar leaving his wife in charge with Rasputin. Starting on March 9, 1917, over 100,000 protesters flooded the streets demanding the replacement of the Tsar. They also demanded that Russia leave the war since all the kids are being sent to a war they don't even want to be in. The number of protesters increased even more after there was a rumor about there being another cut in bread. Fearing for his safety, Tsar Nicholas abdicated his throne because he believes it will guarantee his family's safety. Starting the Romanovs are moved from place to place and are, essentially, held prisoners set in places. Eventually, they are taken to the Ipatiev house in Ekaterinburg, near the Ural Mountain. The Ural Mountain served as the natural divider between Asia and Europe. The Romanovs are kept in strict isolation without any of their procession. All of their windows had to be covered in newspaper to prevent people looking in and from the Romanovs looking out. They are guarded day and night by around 300 soldiers. They had to ring a bell every time they wanted to go to the bathroom. The four daughters are now 13, 17, 19, and 20, and were most likely sexually assaulted by the guards. On July 17, 1918, the Romanovs were awakened at around 3 a.m. in order to get ready for another move, but instead, they are taken in a 20-foot by 16-foot semi-basement instead. They were told that protesters found out where they were and that there was a chance that they were going to be fired upon. Tsar Nicholas, who's 50, Tsarina Alexandra is 46, and their children, 13 years old Alexei, 17 years old Anastasia, 19 years old Maria, 21 years old Tatiana, and 22 years old Olga, along with the family personal physician Eugene Botkin and 3 of their servants. All of the servants, including the doctor, voluntarily stay with the family. Little do they know that in another room, a firing squad has been assembled for 7 communist soldiers from Central Europe. Nikolai Alexandrovich, in view of the fact that your relatives are continuing their attacks on Soviet Russia, the Euro Executive Committee has decided to execute you. With virtually no time to react, the Romanovs are fired upon. Nicholas is the first to fall and almost everyone else follows, except Anastasia, Tatiana, and Maria, as they had over 1.3 kilograms of jewels sewn into their clothing. The executioners were then told to continue with the execution with their bayonets, since the gunshots had awakened the nearby neighbors.
One eternity later.
In May 1979, a local amateur sleuth and retired geologist, Alexander Avodonin, and his group of 3 friends find 3 skulls in a shallow grave. But they didn't make too much of an attempt to get people to DNA test since, at this point, Russia was at the height of the Cold War. So instead, they buried the skulls. Alexander asked for a commission to be appointed to the murder of the Romanovs, but whose request was ignored for over 10 years. Finally, in 1991, just 6 months before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, a commission was appointed by Boris Yeltsin to investigate the murders of the Romanov family. With the leads from Alexander, they find the remains of what they confirmed were the bodies of the Romanov family, but 2 of the children's bodies were missing. The missing bodies include Alexei and either Maria or Anastasia. When the commission took the skulls to be buried with the rest of the family, the Russian Orthodox Church refused to believe that these were the remains of the Romanov family, even though there was DNA evidence supporting the fact that this was the skull of the Romanov family. The bones remain in the Russian State Archive. Fast forward 16 years to 2007, the bones of Alexei and his sister Maria were found in a small pit close to a bonfire, close to where the original grave was. This was done on purpose, since finding a grave consisting of 11 bodies would be highly suspicious, considering the fact that the 11 people were murdered. So by separating Alexei and his sister's body were completely intentional to throw people off. Alexei and his sister's corpse were finally burned, and their remaining bones were smashed and tossed into a smaller pit. Fast forward 8 years, and the bones were ultimately confirmed authentic.